that
All right, good evening and welcome everybody. My name is Christina and I'm with Atlantic Institute, and tonight is our second tour of faith and we are visiting the faith of Scientology. We have independent Scientologist William Pena with us. He is here to speak and answer all of our questions about Scientology. Before we start, I would like to show you our quick video that explains a little bit about Atlantic Institute. I think some of you have seen it, and I think, but I just would like to show you at the moment. Let's go ahead and go to here. Oh, wait. I know you're not going to be able to hear it if I do it like that. So let's go to here.
The Atlantic Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting harmonious coexistence between peoples of various cultures, faiths, and backgrounds. We seek this goal through peaceful dialogue, education initiatives, and community organization. Our dialogue events bring together experts, community and faith leaders, and knowledge seekers to address social issues that affect us all. We feel dialogue is the most important element in peaceful coexistence, so we try and maintain several panel discussions, TED Talk events, and book clubs throughout the year. These events touch on social issues, race relations, and cultural understanding and are a mainstay of our programming. The Atlantic Institute's education events are extremely important to our mission of understanding. We want to promote socially forward critical thinking to students of all ages. To that end, we have developed programs that seek to grow the creative spirit of students and help them think about their communities and the world around them. Our Future Leaders of Dialogue event brings together nominated elite students to learn from each other as well as political and business leaders. Our art and essay contest gives students a theme about important societal issues and allows them to create wonderful works of art and writing while steering their minds towards improving their world. We're always seeking ways to educate youths and adults in order to make a peaceful world for all of us. Our community events are designed to transform neighbors into friends and groups of people into a community. By associating with other nonprofits or by our own initiative, we are always trying to discover new avenues to improve our neighborhoods, places of worship, and community centers. We host cooking demonstrations of food from other cultures, work with various nonprofits to help elevate the work of others, and try to find a way to make the lives of those who are disenfranchised or marginalized better. Building a more peaceful world starts in our backyards, so we are dedicated to improving our communities and associations. The Atlantic Institute is always seeking like-minded volunteers and collaborators. If you would like to learn more, find volunteer opportunities, or just want to chat with our staff, please visit our website at www.atlanticinstitutesc.org or follow us on Facebook. We will never run out of fun, educational, peaceful events, so come join us to help make this world a better place full of understanding and unity.
And so that right there is a little bit about Atlantic Institute. Let me just get rid of my YouTube screen. So that right there is a little bit about Atlantic Institute. We just kind of like try to let everybody see that beforehand and kind of understand the gist of what it is we do. During the month of July, we do this wonderful tour of faiths, and we have 11 different tours this month. And on the 11th, we do have a special tour to Jerusalem that we're doing virtually with a tour guide that is in Jerusalem. So if you haven't signed up for that, sign up for it now. All right, let's go ahead and go over to Willie. Good evening.
Hello.
If you would like to give us a brief introduction and let us know a little bit about you, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, I am a content creator and marketer currently in Los Angeles, California. Basically, I create videos, blog posts, posters, anything digital media used to help businesses sell more stuff and also entertain people. So that's kind of what I do. Of course, LA is a epicenter for this kind of work. However, lately I've been finding myself with a little bit of a wanderlust, and I'm attempting to do the same work while traveling, because traveling has always been a goal of mine. I recently did 4 months in Cancun, and I was able to work while living in Mexico, which is pretty awesome. So I'm back here for a few months just to kind of plan my next leg of my journey. I was talking to Christina earlier, and I think I'll be traveling around the country in my SUV and just kind of exploring things. So that's kind of me. I'm a bit of an adventurer. Probably why I got into Scientology in the first place, because I was like, "Ooh, what's this new thing? Let me check it out." And that's kind of my story is an adventure type, creative adventure type.
Thank you. So can you tell us what attracted you to Scientology?
Okay, there's two things. Yeah,
I was going to say, how did you first hear about it too?
Yeah, I first heard about it through friends. I was in a rap band. I was a DJ, and I was in a rap band, and the people in that circle, some of them were Scientologists, and at the time I had a drug problem, like most wayward youth did, and so they were like, you should get clean, and the things that you want to discover with drugs as far as expanding your mind, because I was never into drugs for a party thing. I was always like, Buddhism, or I want to learn about the mysteries of life. So that's why I did those. And they're like, well, the answers that you're searching for, you can find without endangering your life, your mind, and your soul naturally. So that kind of got me into it. Started with Dianetics, which was a precursor to Scientology, and I had some what's called auditing, which is a counseling practice, and it changed my life. Literally, in a 2.5-hour session of Dianetics, I lost completely all fear of the dark and most fears, period. So I was able, that night when I got home from that session, I literally walked around my apartment in pitch black. I'm like, I can't believe all these illusions were simply illusions and messing with my head. They're gone. And they stayed gone. So that experience was a very profound spiritual thing. Imagine, I don't care what religion you are or practice, if something as profound as you lose all your fears and you see the world rationally for the very first time, and the power that gives you personally, that's going to have a pretty deep effect on you. And you're going to want to explore more, because that was just a tip of the iceberg. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. I was always into spiritualism. I was raised Roman Catholic, but that kind of hit a dead end for me. And I was exploring, martial arts, Buddhism a little bit, kind of touching on Eastern philosophies. And Scientology was a little bit more scientific, something that I could actually follow steps. And that's what kind of attracted me to it. That was a mouthful. Sorry, guys.
No,
I will ramble
good.
if somebody doesn't stop me.
No, that was a great explanation. What are some of the beliefs for Scientology?
Yeah. The basic belief is that you're a spiritual being. And the contrast to many other religions is that we believe that the person speaking is the spirit, whereas others believe that they have a spirit that goes somewhere, like to heaven or to hell. In Scientology, we believe that you yourself, the one looking right now and observing whatever, is the spiritual being, and that's what we address. We don't address some thing which is I don't want to degrade anybody else, but it's not like a thing separate you have to like care for. It is you that needs to be cared for. So that's one of the main things, that you're a spiritual being. You've lived forever. You will continue to live forever. And another basic premise is that your spiritual trauma or your experiences from the past can have direct bearing on how you act right now. That's not very different from psychotherapy, to be honest, where your past trauma informs your decisions today. I think Scientology goes a lot deeper and it explores a lot more of a spiritual being's history. So we work on kind of clearing up those traumas and becoming more here and now, as opposed to, everyone can relate to moments in our lives where we've been not present, and that usually doesn't feel good. It's usually a moment where we're not very resourceful, and we're taking emotions that we shouldn't be dredging up and using them inappropriately. So we're trying to get rid of all that stuff, just to live freer. And then there's different levels in Scientology. So there's what's called a bridge. It's been called lately the bridge to total freedom. That's a bit of a hard sell, over exaggeration. I don't think Elder Rachel ever called it that specifically. Over in Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, he just called it the classification and gradation chart. And it's basically a chart that lists the levels of spiritual advance that correspond with the amount of study and counseling that you receive. And so you start off, just a basic new person. You read books, you get some basic auditing, and you go up the levels. And you should go basically as both a student of how to counsel another person, and as a recipient of the counseling. That way, it's balanced, and you go up these levels of awareness more effectively. And there's an ultimate state called operating Theta, otherwise known as OT. And that's basically, it's not a concrete, defined, limited thing. It's just simply, it's a measurement of how capable you are as a person, as a spiritual being. So, and that's basically defined by yourself, really. Is everyone's capable and able to do things? How much more able and capable can you reach? So that's basically the journey. We're trying to become better people, because by creating better people, you eventually create a better world. So there's a lot of solutions to basic problems of life, of communication, of finances, work problems, overwhelm from life itself. There's a lot of solutions that are built into Scientology. But I would like to clarify that's not a complete system. There's other things that you can do, including something as simple as praying to your God, walking around the block, changing your nutrition. So Scientology fits into your life. It's not something that takes over, or it shouldn't take over your entire life.
I also was thinking as you were speaking that it's important to acknowledge that you consider yourself an independent Scientologist. And so
Yes.
if you could explain, just because I know when everybody is listening here, for them to really get that you're an independent Scientologist, if
Right.
you could explain what that means,
Right.
that would be great.
It's kind of a loosey-goosey term. It means that you practice Scientology, but you're not associated with the official church. And people disassociate themselves from the official church for any number of reasons. You can just look them up, or there's shows where people talk about their bad experiences with Scientology. So I'm not going to get into those things. I'll go into why there's an independent movement. It's because we feel that the technology that L. Ron Hubbard developed works. However, it's currently being misapplied and kind of shoved down people's throats and used as a control mechanism. I think every single thing in the world undergoes that same thing, where it's like, it starts off great, and then some people get into power and it all goes to hell. Scientology is no different. So it happened. Back in the 80s, there was a new leader who took some of LRH's kind of toughness philosophy, but he amplified it to like a zillion and started really punishing people, and people got turned off. So the independent movement is, you practice Scientology, you can go full OT, every single thing in Scientology is available to you, but you're not beholden to the mother church. It's basically Protestantism. So we're the Protestants of the main Catholic Church, I guess, or whatever it was back then, the main Christian church. We've split off, but we're not an organization. We're simply individuals. Some of us network together that practice Scientology, because you do not need an organization to practice Scientology. It helps to have a few people around to help you with your counseling, your studying and stuff, but it should be free and open to everyone. And that's what the independent movement is about. It shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. You can get it even for free. And I think that's a more effective way for an individual to progress up the Scientology gradation chart, as opposed to in an official church where there's a lot of distractions. There's a big, excuse me, kind of a money push all the time. And the negative connotations that you hear about Scientology come from that establishment. We don't want to be associated with it.
I think if I remember, I know you were gracious enough to speak with us last year about Scientology, and that there was like, to move up the chart, there were fees involved in a lot of that, because there was different books or different the sessions, I think, to pay for am I correct?
Yeah. So
right. So when you're talking about it
yeah.
should be free, it should be this, it should be that's where you're coming from.
that's where I'm coming from. And it doesn't have to be free, because if I'm going to counsel somebody, that's time out of my day. There's a lot of expertise and training that goes involved. It's very, very technically exact when you're good. So you should be compensated for that, but you shouldn't have to pay as much as some people are paying, especially if they're not getting the results. So, just like anything else, if you go to a mechanic and he's a crappy mechanic and he's tinkering around, you're going to come out with your car all messed up. Same thing with a spiritual practitioner. If he's not very well trained or doesn't do his best to help somebody, you're not going to get great results. And that's been an issue, where there's been some issues with the technical application of it, because it does go very, very high. It goes very, very high into someone's spiritual world and their psyche. So the higher you get, the more delicate you kind of have to be, and more technically precise. And all the best auditors in the world, in my opinion, the counselors, are in the independent field and no longer in the church. So the great, 30, 40-year experienced veterans are still doing exactly what they were doing in the church, but outside and for very, very cheap. So there's a thriving movement outside of the church, which is refreshing to see, and allows a lot more people to enter. I've been talking recently to a lot of new guys through the independent fields who never even went to the church. And they're all excited and happy, and it's a positive thing in my view.
I was gonna just say, if anybody in here would like to ask a question, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand on it, I will go ahead and call on you, and then you can ask a question or make a comment.
Please ask away,
well,
because or else I'm just going to ramble. I'd really like to address anyone's questions, because it's a very broad subject. So there's a lot to ask about it.
So like so just to kind of lay it out a little bit, like in the Christian faith, everybody like gets together on Sundays, they go to church, they listen, they might have their own independent study, they might have small groups that they might do sometime during the week, and then we get together on the holidays, like the typical ones like Easter and Christmas Eve services and stuff like that. So laid out in the Scientology aspect, like, is there a common gathering that everybody has together? Like who decides what to discuss? Like, is there anything laid out similarly along those lines of the Christian faith aspect?
Not really. In the official church, they do sometimes do a Sunday service. When I was on staff as a practitioner, we rarely did those. The main focus really is, and the community aspect is getting together in a course room with fellow students and helping each other through the drills and the study. So it would be akin to the small little Christian groups that get together and do Bible study. So that would be the corollary there. There's certain events every few months, such as celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dianetics was a big one. The release of the book. L. Ron Hubbard's birthday is celebrated every year. But they're not the same as a mass, for example. We don't really have a mass. There's a Sunday service where they might talk about a few precepts, but I personally have attended zero ever.
There's a prayer for total freedom, and there's other prayers, but not much as what you would consider a church service.
And I've never ever, not even once. I don't even know the prayer.
Yeah, but it's written on various places.
It's written, but I don't know it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I know Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Like,
yes,
right. I know that by heart,
yes,
because of Mass. But in Scientology, there's really no. It's not. There should be, and it's provided for in the organizational bulletins, and there's even a chapel in many organizations, but it's not a thing. And I think it's a shame.
One similarity, Willie, would be people quoting source. Ron says in this bulletin or this book, just like people say in chapter 12 of Corinthians, blah, blah, blah. That's a similarity.
Yeah, that is a similarity. But you don't usually see that happening on a day-to-day basis in the Catholic Church. Like, well, you got to study Luke 12.
No, I'm more Protestant, so you get it more in the Protestants.
Yeah. So basically, the answer is there's not really in practice a community thing where everyone gets together and says we're Scientologists and we're gonna have cookies and ribs cookout. That rarely happens. Actually, per policy is discouraged in the church, and I think that's a shame. You need to build community. You need to have people come together, and that's how you build a group of people. So I think that will be one thing which in the independent field actually happens more. There was a celebration a couple of weeks ago for 2 prominent Scientologists who passed away, and people flew in from all over the place. Everyone got together. There were critics of Scientology. There were people who were ex-Scientologists who hate Scientology with a passion. There were new Scientologists. There was dedicated Scientologists, all in one space. Pretty much everyone got along according to all reports. I was busy, I didn't go. And they had food and entertainment and whatever. And I think a lot more of that has to happen just everywhere, because you allow different points of view to come in, and you can talk to a person who might be an apostate and realize they're just trying to get along in life and they're fine. They're nice people. Maybe they don't have the same ideas as I do, like a Republican and a Democrat, but there's no need for all this stuff.
I have Shayla asked a question in the chat, but before I discuss that, Carolyn, can you just tell us, because I know you emailed me, but can you, just for the benefit of the group to know, can you just tell us a little bit, just tell us your background with this? Because I know you might chime in on some of this, and I want to just make sure everybody understands why.
Okay. My dad was an Episcopal minister, so I grew up in the Episcopal Church and got a lot out of it. And shortly after I was married, my husband, who was also a preacher's kid in the same church, and I ran into a friend at a party who had invited some Scientologists. And I was a new social worker at the time, and he talked about how auditing could really change a person's life. And I could see already that I wasn't making that much of a dent in people's lives, and I had to check it out. So that was the beginning. I mean, that was in 1968. It isn't like I haven't had my ups and downs and my disagreements with the church, but what I have read, and I'm just going through all the basic materials now again, there's so much truth there that I'm willing to put up with the bullshit, excuse my language, because I haven't gotten all I want to out of it yet. I came back to South Carolina when we retired, and went back to the Episcopal Church, because in South Carolina there's maybe 8 or 10 good long-term Scientologists, people who've been to LA and done a lot of auditing and training, or who have been to Clearwater, Florida. And I knew I needed a spiritual home, so I went to the Episcopal Church and said, will you let me in? And she said, I don't know anything about Scientology, but why don't you do this 4-year course we have called Education for Ministry? Not that you're going to be ordained, but you go through the Old Testament, the New Testament, church history, and modern theology and social justice and interfaith issues. So that was a 4-year process, and I can really speak both languages now well.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and so what I have found, most people who are very strong Christians agree with heartily is a concept called the dynamics of life, which is a series of concentric circles. And you start in the middle with you yourself. You go out to the second circle, which is sex and children and creativity. And the third one is groups like Boy Scouts, churches, businesses, and so on. The fourth is all of mankind. The fifth is other living things like plants and animals. The sixth is the entire physical universe. The seventh is you as a spiritual being. And the eighth he calls, it's either God or infinity or the allness of all. And you look at that and you go, well, is there anything else? I don't know. There may be, but that covers a lot. And it contributes to a way of knowing how to make decisions about things. what's going to be beneficial, what's going to harm the least number of circles. So I see plenty of imperfections in the Scientology organization, and if I were anywhere where I could do anything about it, maybe I mean I would, but the thing is that I'm not. So what I'm trying to do is just plant seeds here and have people look for themselves.
That's great. That's a fantastic way to put it. And I'm in a similar boat. I've been interviewing old time Scientologists, people that work with LRH, and putting these interviews on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because I want truth, and that's a common denominator to most Scientologists.
And I would have imagined they went through heck with him. He would have been a real stern person. I'm not stern, but you would really have to be on your toes all the time to learn from him. If you listen to those early lectures,
yeah, but they love him.
That's not the right word. Well, I want to talk to you because I want to hear what they had to say if they're going through the factors or the Phoenix lectures.
Right.
Some of the stuff seems like it's over my head.
Yeah, well, I interviewed the guy who did the first TRs course ever, and I put that on YouTube. TRs are training routines and their communication drills. And this guy did the first one ever. He just passed away, so I interviewed him in January. He passed away in April, so I was very lucky.
Who's that?
He was an auditor for 70 years, Perry Shepard, and he did the first training routine course ever. And he said, basically, a student was like, "Hey, we need to know how you do this.
Yeah.
We don't know how you do this. You do it, but we don't know how."
Yeah.
And she wrote on like a napkin or something, handed it off, and or LRH wrote the instructions. Do this, da da da. And that was the first course, how the first TR's training routine course, which establishes the communication cycle between an auditor and the person he's helping. So this guy has a bunch of history that I was able to get on videotape, and it's on YouTube now.
Oh.
If you go to the channel is Theta space N space official, and there's 2 interviews on there so far, and I have 2 more that I'm releasing. Okay. So I'm trying to get truth out. It was not always daisies, but what's contained in the material is fantastic.
Yeah. Theta space. I just want to put that in the chat in case anybody wants to look at that.
THETA space N space official.
You can find that
on YouTube, and there's also a.
Okay, so
let me double check that.
Thank you very much, Carolyn, for letting us all know, giving us all some information on you. Shayla, I'm gonna come to your questions, but because we were just talking about auditing, I want to just kind of go to Adrian Hartel was asking, what exactly is auditing? Can you give us some specific examples? I figured I'm gonna go to that one first since we were just discussing auditing, and then we'll go. Shayla was. Should I read? Yeah, Shayla said, "Do you have a specific induction process? Who decides you are progressing at a higher level? What do you do to your church? How do you settle discrepancies between community or teachers? And then are the circles representing different spiritual levels?" But first, yes. So first, I just want to go with. I'm just telling you all in case somehow that gets worked in the conversation. If you remember and that gets worked in, but first I want to go with what exactly is auditing, and can you give us some specific examples? And I will go ahead and unpin you, Carolyn, so you're not feeling pressure.
Okay, so auditing is basically a counseling session, spiritual counseling session. There's a finite beginning and ending. Auditing means to listen. Auditor is to listen. So basically a practitioner listens, asks a question, listens to the answer, and acknowledges it. And that is the basic thing that happens in an auditing session. So in practical terms, hi, I'm Joe. Nice to meet you, Joe. Have a seat. I'm going to check that the room is okay, temperature okay, you're comfortable. Perfect. Most auditing is conducted using an e-meter, which I showed last time. It's a measurement device. Doesn't shock you or anything. It doesn't do anything except measure voltage. So you place it in the person's hand, and assuming he's an experienced person, you would say, okay, ready to begin. You start. And then you ask the question. And he said, for example, I'm going to give you a non-auditing question, just a generic question. Do birds fly? The guy says, do birds fly? I don't know. Do birds fly? Yes, they fly. Auditor says, thank you. And then depending on the answer and depending on the type of process, things continue. I'll give you a more real example. So let's say somebody just comes in upset. He's like, well, my boss is a jerk and I hate everybody and I want to quit and blah, 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 blah. He's overwhelmed with life. Auditor might ask some basic questions to clear up that stuff. And he might say, I'm going to make up a question. I'm not going to give you the actual question. Are you upset about anything? He might say, yeah, my boss is a jerk and my wife kicked the dog and I don't got no money, blah, blah, blah. And I just feel terrible about everything. Okay, good. Well, using a couple more questions, he can break that down to find out what exactly it is and narrows it down to really what I'm upset about is I hate my job. Okay. Tell me about that. Well, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now here's where it differs from a lot of psychotherapy and other spiritual practices. If it doesn't clear up, the auditor will say, is there an earlier similar time where you felt that you hated your job or whatever? Yeah, when I was 16, I was riding my bike, doing my paper route, and I just felt really bad. And I was like, why am I wasting my life doing a dumb paper route? Gotcha. Still, the needle on the e-meter is showing indications that there's still a problem. So he says, okay, is there an earlier similar time that you felt this way? Finally, he's like, yeah, the first time I ever helped my dad organize his garage, he yelled at me. Ha, I felt the same exact way I did today. That's crazy. Boom. That incident is now gone from affecting that individual. And the needle will show a nice little floating pattern like this. It's called a floating needle for an auditor study. So I gave you fake questions because I don't want to take anyone into session right now while we're on this video. So I gave you fake questions and a fake thing just so you understand how the process works. And once that floating needle is obtained and the guy feels good, you can consider that process is now flat and you can move on to another process or another question. And it goes on until eventually you clear up all that stuff. So there's a lot to clear up. There's communication problems. There's, quote unquote sins the guy's committed that he feels guilty about. There's problems, just general problems in life. There's issues with recall. There's issues with a person stuck in the way they are because they don't want to change. So that's a higher level thing you gotta work with. It's something where the person looks through life and justifies everything through that lens,
right?
And it makes it impossible to improve. So there's a process to help a person spot that and be able to change, and so on and so forth. So an auditing session typically takes anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. And you're working a list of processes that already developed from beginning to the top to get a person to have these realizations or cognitions, as they're called, of like, wow, I had a disability. I thought it was this. Now, because of the auditing, I realized it was actually this. You spot the source of something for real. The difference in psychotherapy would be you don't really get to the bottom of it, and the psychotherapist tells you what it is. He says, oh, you're probably messed up today because you're stressed. And here's a pill. The pill probably could help. Yeah, like, woo, I feel good with this pill. But you never got to the bottom of the guy's got an issue with his father yelling at him in the garage when he was 4 or whatever. And that will stay there forever until you address it. So you can take any pill in the world. You can change your nutrition. You can do whatever. But until you really address these incidents, they're still with you. And so auditing seeks to clear them out until you hit a point which is called clear, where you no longer have these things hanging in front of you and affecting you and causing you to react. You're no longer a reactive creature. You're more of a rational person. Doesn't mean you don't have problems. Doesn't mean that you can't react to somebody yelling at you or something like that. But there's a lot more clarity in your life and in the way you decide how to do things. And that's kind of what auditing does.
Right. And so to clarify, because Adrian is asking a follow-up, is what does the e-meter read? The e-meter reads
resistance to current. So it's thought of that these mental image pictures, like you think of, some upsetting thing that happened last week. If you're on the ball, you'll feel a little heaviness. You can recreate even the emotion of that. So if you recall, same thing the other way. If you recall something happy or the sun beating on you, you can feel that again. So these things have a little bit of energy. And this energy, when it's a negative incident, tends to pull in to the circuit of the body, right? Gets pulled in. A circuit is being built with one can in one hand, goes through the body, out through the other, and anything which comes in will cause the needle to show that there's a resistance. So it measures resistance and the release of that resistance. And it's physical, electrical resistance.
Right. And I think for some people to get, I used to tell kids I worked with, like, to do like this a few times. I said, and you can feel your body's energy source.
Yeah.
And if you do like this, if you rub your hands for a minute and you go back and forth like this, you'll be able to feel the energy source right there. You can go like this and you can actually feel the magnetization of your own body's energy. Because I think some people don't get that we are all still made of energy.
Yeah, we are electrical creatures.
Well,
we are electrical.
Yes, yeah.
Recognized by science. It's not just spiritual people. It's recognized by science.
Right, that we are, yes. Okay, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You know, if you travel by SUV and you come across to South Carolina, we might have a couple of people here that would like to see if you can even read them.
I love
I have a feeling. So. All right, so going back to Shayla's questions, because I know she had, do you have a specific induction process? Who decides you're progressing at a higher level? How do you settle discrepancies between community or teachers? You know, I was assume like in the Scientology level, if you know, how do you settle?
Yeah, let me address those three real quick.
Yeah.
So an induction would be basically your beginning books, your intro services, get the person interested, and there's the general thing or communication drills and basic auditing. And then a person is hit what they're supposed to hit when they hit what's called the M phenomena. So each course or level has an M phenomena, which you're looking for. So in other words, might be the person can communicate freely about anything to anybody, and he feels that he can do this. Good, he hit the M phenomena. So now he's ready to go up to the next level. So it's all pre-written already. There is an art form to it because you can say, oh, this guy seems to be communicating well, and you might say, oh, he's hit the level, the M phenomena, but maybe you think so, but he hasn't. So there's still sometimes an issue with that, where you have to really make sure that the person has hit the level in his own mind. And then as far as discrepancies, one of the good things and bad things about Scientology is that, like Carolyn alluded to earlier, is that whenever there's something that's brought up, it's like, read the original writing, which can get annoying because we all have opinions and thoughts and stuff. But in the church, it's very frowned upon to explain things. It's more like, read this, and this is what it says, black and white. And if it says it, this is how you do it. So discrepancies are basically resolved by going back to Owen Hubbard's original writing. Not everything is that black and white, however. Life is a complicated thing, as we're all experiencing as people, So not everything is black and white.
Will he talk about how people would, what the further steps would be in that querying?
Sure.
Is there something you're missing in the 3 steps of study?
Well, there's barriers to study. So if somebody doesn't have an agreement with something or disagrees, it could be, number one, I'm going to say there's something wrong with the data itself, and that was never acknowledged. Could be that there's further data which clarifies this data, which is missing to the person, which would be basically a missed ingredient. But the main thing is misunderstood words. So people usually do not get something because they don't understand the words, and that is huge in society-wide. And the other one would be that just don't have reality with it because they haven't seen it applied. So those are some of the barriers that people might encounter. And even if someone has a disagreement with the material, there's ways to help them get the material.
You're right.
Which is pretty cool. It's basically self-correcting to a degree.
Yeah.
All right, next question is from Sheila. I want to get through all of them.
Okay. She was asking, are the circles that represent the different spiritual levels? And I don't think we quite answered that before.
No.
They really represent 8 parts of you.
Yeah.
So they're not specifically levels. Right now, you're existing as the dynamics. So you're existing as a being. You're existing as a person concerned with family or existing as a family unit. You're existing as a group. Right now, we are a third dynamic right now. So this, you're experiencing a third dynamic. You're also experiencing a fourth dynamic, which is all of humanity. Members of all humanity have come together and we're experiencing this together. Fifth dynamic, all life. So right now we are also experiencing being life forms. So we're literally living this right now. Sixth is the physical universe. We have bodies. We exist in the physical universe. So we are experiencing life as a sixth dynamic. Seventh dynamic, spiritual beings. That's going to be a little bit more subjective as the eighth, but if you accept the fact that you're a spiritual being, you right now are being spiritual, just living in this game or this matrix that we have here. And eighth is if you are part of the thing, obviously you're also part of infinity. If you're part of this universe and universes, you can be considered that you're also existing as the eighth dynamic as well. And that's an interpretation. You can also consider that if I have a relationship with a God or my God, I'm also experiencing the eighth dynamic. So it's not like you graduate to different levels. You are experiencing these levels right now. How big and how rich your life is, and how big your dynamics can be is in infinity. So you can be, okay, I have a family of me and my husband. Well, I'm going to expand that and I'm going to have children. Your game just became a lot bigger. Your dynamics have now become a lot bigger. You're now bigger as a person, as a spiritual being, and everything, all of your dynamics have just become bigger, all 8 of them, because you have to worry about food for your children, the school that they go to, how is the planet for these kids, how's the community. So you have literally expanded yourself as a spiritual being just by increasing the size of one dynamic. So you're always on these levels. How big or how small kind of depends. They also go down. Say somebody's got a great life, great career, starts taking heroin. His dynamics are going to collapse. He's not going to have a relationship with his God because he knows that he's sinning. Spiritual, I mean, he's dead. He's dead inside. What spirituality is going to experience? His mess, his matter, energy, space, and time, the sixth dynamic, the physical universe is going to start declining. All drug addicts you eventually see, they're messy, their car sucks, something about them. Their health declines, life, okay, and it goes on down. So you see them on the street babbling incoherently. So the dynamics can expand or they can contract, but you're always living on
them. Very good.
A lot to take in, I know.
Yeah. No. I think when you get all that, then you just get that's you. I think that that helps set a lot of your questioning or your life on a certain path. So Shayla was asking when you were saying where it's written, look back at where it's written, and she's saying where is it all written, and do you follow a specific literature?
Yes, everything is as written by LRH. Anything else has to be identified as written.
She knows, like when you say LRH, it's L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard, one dude, one guy. He was assisted by people. Don't get me wrong. And some of the stuff was actually written by other people, and he put his name on it. He approved it. But it has to be that stuff. And there's basically a series of 15 red technical volumes and 10, 11 green volumes or organizational practices. So there's the spiritual stuff, written stuff. There's the organizational written stuff. And then there's like 30,000 at least recorded hours of lectures.
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of material. And then there's miscellaneous dispatches and things that he wrote that has also become. But it all stems from L. Ron Hubbard, authorized by him, because in his view, one of the issues that happened with other religions is that they started to get diluted, and they no longer became workable because the most important precepts started to get altered. And I see that every day. Every day I'm part of some Facebook groups, and people are misunderstanding things, and other people follow along, and I'm like, eventually I don't even know what you're doing, but it's not Scientology. I don't even know what the heck you're doing. So that's something where it's a survival point. You want to go back to the original material to see what Ellerich intended, or else you can go astray following a bunch of opinions, and nobody wants that.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see 400 years from now whether what the societal reaction is. Has this stuck? Because you know that Christianity was an oral tradition, certainly the ones older than that, a lot of oral stuff. And the stuff that is written may or may not be what was said originally.
Right.
And you'll
You're right.
never know.
The only way we'll know is if it works. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
And it's almost like an accident, you know, different viewpoints of the same fact.
Yep. Yep, you're right.
I wanted to mention something I remember from last year. That I remember you saying that you can have your own faith and Scientology simultaneously, kind of like, and it works for a while until it like doesn't work. So I think, does it make sense to just expound on that a little bit? Because I thought that was very interesting when you said that last year.
It's hard for me to get into because just so many, even within a person's
sorry, I just
faith.
gave you a tough question.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to chew on this a little bit. Let me chew on it a little bit. Because even within a specific religion, you have a bunch of people with different opinions and different ways that they interpret their own religion. So it's difficult, because if I were a Christian, I might say some of the upper level Scientology stuff relates to Genesis. I would see it clearly. I would see what they're talking about in a Scientological point of view. I'm not going to say that now because it's a little bit above people's reality levels, and people should get there on their own. It's part of the journey. But then there's other things about no, not even. I was going to say like Judaism and not eating pork, and Scientologists have no rule against that. But you could literally just be like, I'm a Scientologist and I don't eat pork because I'm Jewish, so there wouldn't really be a conflict there. So I think you'd have to work it out. And if there's any disagreements, I would say most of it is simply a misunderstanding. Clear your terminology, and you'll see that there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. A lot more similarities. Yeah. There's just the terminology might throw people off, and opinions might throw people off, but we're all on the same path. Everyone's on that same end goal. Trust me, we're all on the same path. I don't care what religion you are. Everyone wants spiritual freedom. Everyone's going towards that. How we get there, the V's and whatnot, are different. And honestly, some people won't do well with Scientology. They would prefer, for example, New Age philosophies and the flowery, and that's what feels good to them. And I say, go for it. If you're becoming a better person using your chosen path, you're on the right path. Now, could you enhance that by bringing in other things, just like you can enhance anything with math or education or just general knowledge? Of course. So I guess I would say they can mesh, and they can be brought to my phrasing is off. They can agree. Scientology can agree with every other practice, as long as terminology is straightened out, and that you see a little bit deeper than the surface.
Is there any restrictions on any kind of food or anything like that? Since it made me think of it when we thought of pork.
Not at all. None whatsoever.
Okay. And then
oh, excuse me. Common sense is don't drink before you go into auditing for 24 hours, so your mind is clear. You know what I mean? So you're not in such a like, woo, or hungover, right?
Right. Well, that messes up your energy field, I think, too.
Yeah.
So, okay. I was just thinking that was a good question. I think sometimes isn't that some of that the auditing stuff does it make a relationship difficult? Because I'm thinking, if everybody's at a standstill, everybody get on your meter and have a conversation and get to the bottom of all this.
I've done that. I've done that with past relations where it's like, get on the cans, and what you eventually pull is the little sins, the little withholds that they don't want to tell you.
Little tiny things.
Well, big ones too.
Yeah, right. Okay, so then this is my other question. You were saying, is there I don't know if the word reincarnation is the right way to say it. Is there a belief? And you were saying about being spiritual and being like an ongoing spiritual being. So is there like a reincarnation belief in a way, or like a spirit, like expound on that if you can.
Literally what you think it is, that you die, you are born again. So how he describes certain things which might be out of people's reality because it sounds a bit science fiction-y. But yeah, you die, and some people come back right away. Some people are delayed. That process is an individual process for each person, but it is one of the very fundamental truths or beliefs that you have lived before and will continue to live. Basically, there is no killing you. You can kill your body 1,000,000 times. You can have 1,000,000 different identities, 1,000,000 jobs, but you are you as an essential you forever. You can change your opinions about things. You can create a new life. You can create new challenges, but you, the one who's right now observing, you're you. You can go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you can go unconscious and kind of wake up and be like, "Ooh, wow," but you're still there. It's impossible to destroy you. You just go to sleep, basically. Go completely unconscious.
Right.
So yeah, that aligns with a lot of other religions. However, I think what's different is that the issue of karma is a little bit different. Like as far as like, oh, you're going to come back as and I don't understand this very well, so I don't mean to simplify this, but you're going to come back as an animal or as a grasshopper or whatnot because of your karma. That doesn't tend to factor into our beliefs. Basically, you come back as a person.
Oh, as a human every time.
Yep.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. Any other questions that anybody has? If you'd like to type it in there, or if you'd like to just raise your hand.
I would like to correct that the YouTube channel is just Theta space N. Theta space N. And
okay.
the Facebook page where I occasionally post is, give me 1 second. Pages.
MB, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Christina. And Willie, would you address the objections to Scientology? You mentioned earlier that at your gathering, there were some people who had decided they didn't want anything to do with Scientology. What are the common objections to Scientology?
Oh, great question. The main one, there's three biggies. First is price. Is why do I gotta pay for spiritual freedom? Kind of everyone pays for spiritual freedom. Even at your church, you have your tithes, things like that. So everyone, you have to support your church, or else the church doesn't exist. So the financial thing is not so important. However, the main one, which drives a lot of emotion and a lot of stuff, is the process of disconnection. And that is when somebody, and every church does this, is to declare somebody an apostate and say, anyone in the church, if you want to remain in good standing, you cannot talk to blah, blah, even if that's your kid or your dad or your sister. Understandably, people hate this. I hate it. I think it's stupid, and I ignore it. I don't even do it. Like, no, I'll talk to whoever the hell I want. But that has been such a horrible part of our history as Scientologists, as a Church of Scientology, that just has got to go. That has got to go. Because while I understand in some cases somebody might be extremely hostile to somebody for their beliefs, In most of these cases of disconnection, it's not that way. It's simply people just want to go on with their lives, live their lives. Maybe they don't want to be Scientologists anymore and just go be happy. And for many cases, they're disconnected from just for that reason. I'm like, that's wrong. Any religion that does that is wrong. So that's number two. Number three is a process of fair gaming. This is where the church gets scary, and they can literally follow people, send private investigators, and harass people who they consider to be dangerous enemies of the church. Again, who doesn't do this? Our government does it all the time. Corporations do this all the time to each other. It is part of life. But if you're trying to set a good example for people and change the world, you probably should refrain from this practice, especially if you're a religion. And they have to get extremely aggressive with this. So, for example, one of the biggest executives to leave the church, called Marty Rathburn, he left, and like people would follow him and harass him and videotape him and stuff like that. That's fair game. It's basically an intimidation factor, or using the courts to intimidate people. Again, it's not just Scientology who does this. Everyone does this. The world is like this, but they do it unnecessarily, in my opinion, and they do it in a sense, in a way that it's almost corny. Like they'll build websites to attack a critic. I'm like, really? Are you 4 years old? You gotta build a website to criticize one of your critics? Why don't you just defend your own principles and not worry about the critic? So those are the three: money, disconnection, and fair game, I would say, are the main ones.
Thank you.
Yep.
Shayla was asking, is it true you don't accept medical help?
No, I don't know where that comes from.
So I will say, I think that Scientology is sometimes crossed with Christian Science, Christian Scientist. And I had discussions with them last year as well as with you. And there is a lot more belief in the natural healing process in Christian Scientist. But I think there's still some acceptance of, like if you have a broken leg kind of thing, that but expand on that if there's anything you want.
Yeah, no, there's a reasonable dislike of unnecessary medical treatment, especially psychiatric treatment, because you're literally getting people high or hooked on drugs. So logically, you don't want that, because what does that do? It hurts your dynamics, right? It hurts your ability to think, hurts your ability to function. So we don't, as a general, like a lot of heavy psychiatric drugs, nor unnecessary medical treatment. Because why? So there is, we have some things called the cysts, which are to help with pain, to help with certain physical conditions. But if you're sick, you need to go to a doctor. So there's no restriction on don't go to a doctor. If that's ever been done, it's because of somebody's misunderstanding of it, because there's no official, like, never go to a doctor because God's going to heal you, or this specific process is going to heal you. This specific process can speed up the healing cycle. If you do this, you might feel some pain reduction, but you still need to get medical attention. Now, psychiatric treatment, and I don't agree with this, because I've seen with my own eyes how somebody who was very, very psychotic, and I tried to help them, while I did, until they took psychiatric medication, they were still very, very crazy. So I think there's got to be a blend. We need to work with other disciplines, with other people. One example where I would love Scientology to get more involved is just regular therapy. So there's a couple of disciplines called neuro-linguistic programming, rational emotive behavioral therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy. These are all psychological practices. And a lot of them have a lot of similarity to Scientology as far as therapy to process. And they're all valuable. And I think that if all disciplines learn from each other and mesh with each other, and you bring in the doctor when you need to, you bring in the psychiatrist when you need to, we would do a lot more good. If psychiatrists knew Scientology, man, this would be a different world. It would be freaking phenomenal because you could medicate where needed and also address the person's real issues, the real issues. So you can get up to a point of stability, handle their deep-seated psychoses using some Scientology and Dianetics, and as a complement to therapy, bring a person up to a much better state of mind and life and quality of life. So it's unfortunate that there's been a battle where Scientologists are like, no, psychiatry is evil, and psychiatrists are like, Scientologists are all crazy. They need to work together because each one has a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, yeah.
You're muted, Christina.
There's some dogs barking. I forgot. I think I remember that from the 90s. I think I remember hearing how Scientology was against medications and things like that. I remember something like that from back then.
Just to justify why, it was because it was really more against electroshock and lobotomies in the 50s, which was more prevalent. So that's when he started like his crusade against things. And there's a much deeper history, but superficially, they were harming people and he was against it. So that's basically what it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can also see, like, I know it can change your energy structure. And so I think sometimes, like, you can't properly try to help somebody if their energy field is manipulated.
Yeah.
You can't get to the bottom of what the problem is.
They're a bit more wooden and dead. They're a little bit more, you know what I mean? It's harder to work with.
Right. Okay. So any other questions? Because it's 8:25 and I know we want to wrap everything up. Any other thoughts or questions?
I will say that Theta and Official is the Facebook page. Facebook.com, Theta and Official is the Facebook page. And that's where you can see more stuff.
So Shayla was it was Tom Cruise, Christian Science.
I'll just ask you whether Tom Cruise was what? Was he Scientologist or Christian Science?
He's Scientologist.
Scientologist, yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's where I read that they do not take any medications or something, or don't.
Yeah, what it was he freaked out on the stupid thing he did. He freaked out on Brooke Shields because she was taking psychiatric medication for her postpartum depression, and he attacked her for it like an idiot. I don't know if it's even his business what she does with her postpartum depression, but he went after her, which is a big PR mistake, and people rightfully called him out, like, "What is your problem, you weirdo?" But that doesn't represent all of Scientology. That's just Tom Cruise.
Sorry about that, but that's what I remember. That's why I asked you whether.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think it makes it tough sometimes. I think with any faith, when somebody's kind of big name is of that faith, and they do something, and you're sitting there like, oh, everybody's.
Yeah. At this point, I'm used to it. I'm just like, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. I don't care what religion he is. He acts like a buffoon sometimes, just like anybody else. You know?
Right. Any other last questions? I just want to check and see.
7:28.
Thank you very much for all of your questions and all of your help. Thank you very much, Willie. If you guys would like to, I'll go ahead and unpin us. Remove spotlight. Remove spotlight. Okay, I'm stuck. I thought I removed the spotlight and I can't see it. Gallery view. All right, let me just go ahead and wait. I can say if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself and unblacken yourself or picture yourself and just say good evening or say thank you or anything like that. You're welcome to do that. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we will see you at the next Tour of Faith. And I don't have that on my radar at the moment to tell you when that is, but I know that you'll be getting an email on Monday to remind everybody to sign up for whatever it is that this coming week. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you very much, Willie, for taking your time to talk with us and share with us about your faith. And I would like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July.
Thank
You
you very
too.
much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
Can you sign for all of them at the same time? And you will
Yes,
just send us
you have
out.
to go to each one
And
and
you are
sign
going
up.
to send the link every